Hi and welcome to RCKicks. On today's show, well, we're back working on the TRICKBITS YZ10R. In the last episode, we basically built up the chassis and got it to be a roller. In this video, we've got to button up a few bits and pieces that I didn't finish before, like the under tray, and also we've got to fit electronics in it. Then after that, we're going to take it for a bit of a spin, just to give it a gentle shakedown with some basic electronics in it, just to make sure everything is ticking over as it should do before we start dialing it in. So if you're interested to see how it went on its first shakedown, you better stay tuned. So in the last episode we were set to put the electronics in it, but I couldn't put the electronics in it before I did the under tray, and I needed to paint the under tray before I fitted it, before I fitted the electronics. You see where this is going. And I didn't have the black paint that I needed to paint them before I could fit them, before I could fit the electronics. So that's why in the last video I didn't get round to fitting the electronics. But I managed to pick up some PS5 Tamiya paint, cut out and painted up the side under tray, and then I fitted them. Once they were in, that means we could then fit the electronics in it. While I was waiting for the paint to arrive, I decided to order these rims. Now these are from JC Racing. These are the Yokomo 94 YZ10 rims. The actual rims that I had on it in the previous video were for my 870C, and believe it or not, the rears don't fit. So what I did was I actually had the hubs around the wrong way. I had the thinner ones on the back. But when you put the fatter ones on the back, they actually rub. So that was the problem with that. So I had to swap the hubs back over as well, as I had them round the wrong way in the last video. Yeah. Anyway, while they were on order, I also ordered some tyres. I got the same ones I usually get for when I go carpet racing, yellow cactus rears and fusion fronts. Now there's fusions and fusion 2s. And for some reason, I personally prefer the fusions. I have got fusion 2s, and as far as I can work out, the sidewalls are a little bit bigger, so it doesn't feel as sharp on the turn-in. But I don't know whether this is just in my mind or whether it actually is. So I do plan at some point when I run this car again, I will put fusions on the front, then swap to fusions on the 2, run it again and see if it actually adjusts my times. But for now, I tend to always buy the fusions, not the fusion 2s. Now that all the under tray is dried and fitted to the car, I can fit the electronics. Now I'm not going to fit my Corsetec stuff just yet, as I need that in my Durga to do a comparison video. But for now, what I'll do is I'll put in my stock setup that I've got, which is perfect for just a shakedown. Now that is the Hobbywing XR Pro, the FGR4S version 2 receiver. I will upgrade that as well to the latest and greatest from FlySky. It's a Redisonic 540M motor. As for the servo, normally I would drop in a reef servo, but the way that it actually fits in this car, it's clamped in, not bolted in using the side mounting points, and you actually have to remove them. So for now, what I've done is I've used a plastic case servo, much easier for me to cut off the tabs than to grind them off with the metal housing, plus I'd probably want to do it properly. So I've used a KST servo. Now I was given these a while ago and they're actually pretty good. They tend to turn up in helicopters apparently. Now the only thing that concerns me is not the performance of it, it's just how tough it is. Can it stand up to my driving? Now I've made some changes since the last video. I've been talking to Albie and he's been sending me information as a setup for a tight carpet track, which is where I run. So a few things I've changed so far. The springs that are on this car, which are blue in the rear and red in the front, I'm actually ordering a spring set from Albie so that I can dial them in properly. So that's coming soon. Also, I've got to change out the shock oil as well, and to get closer to a carpet track, but Albie's helping me with that, so hopefully over the next week or two we'll start to dial in the car a little bit more. I swapped out the 1 degree rear pivot blocks and now we've got 2 degree in the rear. Also, the caster blocks in the front now gone to a 4 degree. One last thing before we take it racing, and I wanted to know what did it weigh with its battery ready to race, and I was quite surprised. I was thinking about maybe upgrading to titanium screws throughout this whole car, as I thought, well, I'll try and get it as light as possible. When I weighed it with the battery in it, it was 1.488 kilos or 1,488 grams. Yeah, that's light. To put it into context for you, the Durga is coming in at 1.584 kilos or 1,584 grams. That's 96 grams heavier than this. Also, when you look at the PR Racing, that's 1,633 grams. That's 145 grams heavier than this. So I'm really surprised just how light it is. Plus, when I weighed that, that was with my Gens Ace battery. So if I go to my lightweight, low center of gravity battery that I run in it, it pushes the weight even further, down to 1,452 grams. Yeah, so against the Durga, it's 132 grams lighter. And the SB401 is 181 grams lighter. Yeah, so imagine if I did swap it out to titanium screws, it would get even lighter, as this car uses a lot. There seems to be a lot of screws in this chassis and bolts, so changing them out to titanium, yeah, this could be a super light buggy for sure. So I like that. I like obviously the lighter you can get it, the more nimble, especially on a small tight track. It really helps for your accelerations, your braking, and everything is improved. So I was actually quite blown away. So maybe I'll splash the money and put some titanium screws in it and see just how light we can go. But I don't know whether vintage buggy racing actually has weight minimums. If you know, comment below. I always thought there was a set minimum you could work to. Now obviously if there is, that's still an advantage to run your car as light as possible, because then you can put the weight back in exactly where you need it around the chassis, so you can really balance out your chassis well. So I don't know, I'm guessing that maybe there isn't a limit on the vintage racing weights. Comment below, let me know. Right, let's take it on the track, give it a shakedown, and just to show you can see it going around the track before in the following video we run it in anger. 1, 2. Right, this is the first time I've driven this car, and it's just a shakedown, so I'm not pushing crazy hard. I'm trying to be gentle, as being that it's brand new. It's not even been down the road. This is the first time I've ever turned a wheel in this car, and I just want to make sure that everything is running smoothly, that the belts are okay and everything's turning as it should. There's nothing that's loose. And so far reasonably happy with it. It does feel very different because obviously I'm running a different ESC and motor and servo combo than what I'm used to. In the next video I'll swap it over, and then I'll should be able to improve my lap times. Now the times that I'm setting for this one, even though I'm not really pushing, were pretty much on par with the Durga as it was in the previous video that I released, apart from the stupid mistakes that I'm making. The steering does feel quite different, I'm guessing because of the servo. Also, I left the anti-roll bars on the car this time, but apparently I need to remove them for carpet racing, so Albie tells me. So that's something I'm going to do, as well as the shocks are not quite right. There's a little bit of give in them before they actually damper, so I think I might have some air trapped in them a little bit. But just to give it a first run and shakedown, it feels okay. The car obviously being very light does feel quite nimble, just feels a bit different to what I'm used to. One thing you'll notice is I'm overshooting corners. That's because the drag brake in this ESC is not set to be as high as it is on the Corsa one, so I'm just overshooting. I was actually driving 3 cars this evening, so jumping from one car to another also is very difficult for me. I like to run one car and then really settle into it versus chopping from one to the other, as cars can be very different. So you get used to turning in at certain points on the track, and then you swap to a different car, and then you've got to relearn it all over again. But one thing I'm really happy to report is it feels like it's got lots of potential. It's very smooth and it turns super sharp. If anything, it's a little bit too sharp at the front end compared to the other cars that I'm running. So it'd be really interesting to see, once I dial this in, just how fast it can go. Can I get it to be as fast as my PR Racing? If so, being that this is technically a vintage car, taking it and then running it in the vintage would be a bit of a weapon, but we'll just have to wait and see. Now, as it's just a shakedown, I'm not pushing in anger. There's no point showing you the whole qualifying, but I know you want to see some time comparisons. So I've put up here the Durga around the same track, vs the YZ10 shakedown run. And as you can see, there's not much in it, which quite surprised me, as I was just poodling around getting used to the car. I wasn't even leaning on it, so to get the same as the fully upgraded Durga was a bit of a surprise, really. And it gets me excited to see just how fast this buggy is when you really dial it in and then lean on it. So I was quite surprised. I'm really looking forward to seeing just what this can do, as when I was driving it, I wasn't really trying that hard at all. So to see the times that I'm getting, being that I haven't set it up at all, yeah, I'm really interested to see just how fast I can get this, and I'm very tempted to put the titanium screws in to see if I can get it even lighter. But we'll just have to wait and see. In 2 weeks' time, hopefully I can have it fully ready with all the Corsa electronics in it, dialed in, improved with the different springs and oil rates, get rid of the anti-roll bars to dial it into the specifications that Albie from TRICKBITS has given me, and hopefully we can set some very rapid lap times. I'm really interested to see, can I get this as fast as my PR SB401? Because if I can, a vintage car that goes as fast as a modern racing buggy around the same track, then I could put this in the vintage class. Ooh, that's going to upset a few vintage people, isn't it? Right, thanks very much. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one, as it's going to be an interesting one.